The Basketball Hall of Fame 60 Days of Summer is your chance to see your favorite basketball stars live and in person. Check hoophall.com for a complete list of all these exciting appearances and plan your trip today.
Charlotte should always be the Hornet. Let's be honest.
Yeah, they should.
It's the way that it's meant to be.
Yeah, it is. You know, when they were the Bobcats, I just couldn't. You know, I wasn't a fan. But now that Michael bought the team,
yes,
the majority owned it, and they brought the colors back and the name back. You know, I follow them a lot more now.
It reminds me of you and Rex.
Yeah.
But before you got to Charlotte, I want to actually go way back because 15-year NBA career, legend at the University of Illinois. CSN analyst now. We've got a lot to talk about, but I want to go back to your childhood, playing high school basketball in Chicago, one of the great basketball cities, high school basketball cities from coast to coast. Give me Chicago in your era any day. You, Nick Anderson, Kenny Battle, Ben Wilson, the great names of the time. What was it like every night in that era going to battle against some of the greatest that city's ever seen?
Well, it was highly competitive. In Chicago, it's a big metropolitan area. A lot of basketball players, not only in the city, but also in the surrounding suburbs. When I was at Illinois, we went to the Final Four, and to show you how big the talent pool is there, each one of those players was from the state of Illinois. I don't know whether there was any Final Four team ever to have all the players from the same state, from the same home state. But playing against Nick Anderson, Marcus Liberty, who was the #1 player in the nation at that time, Ben Wilson, unfortunately, who was tragically killed at Simeon High School, who was the #1 player in the nation, probably would have been another Magic Johnson had he lived. But, I get into this, and you guys all know Kenny Smith, the analyst for TNT, who's a friend of mine. We get into this argument all the time about where the best players come from in the world. And I say Chicago hands down. I mean, you look at the Derrick Rose, Anthony Davis, Jabari Parker recently, Isaiah Thomas, Mark Aguirre, Terry Cummings. I can go on and on and on about how many players, pro players that the Chicagoland area produces. So it's quite competitive, and even now we have players that are ranked very high. So if you want to be a great high school basketball player, I suggest you come to Chicago in the summer times and play with those guys, because you're going to get a lot better.
It's so true. And we didn't even mention, Tim Hardaway. We could go
Tim
on
Hardaway.
and on and
on.
We
can keep going.
Yeah, I agree.
Tim would be mad at me if I didn't mention it. Let's not tell him
You're gonna get a phone call about this. If you don't mind, I'd love to talk about Ben Wilson for a minute, because there are a lot of young players here who have probably, sadly, never heard the name Benji Wilson.
Right.
I mentioned, obviously, lost his life tragically after his junior year, won a state title, and then lost his life in a random, horrible act.
Yes.
What would you have? You said Magic Johnson. How would you compare what he was doing at the time to what the NBA was then doing when you went there? He would have fit right into an NBA mold, wouldn't he?
He absolutely would have fit right into the NBA mold. And actually, he was a 6'8.5" point guard.
Yep.
And he could do it all. He could dribble, shoot, pass. That's why he was ranked #1 in the nation shortly before he was killed. And it's such a great guy, great person, great character. Unfortunately, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yes. After high school, you talked about Illinois.
Yes.
Illinois is one of those things, and I wanted to go there. I'm so glad you sort of led us there. The way that team was comprised, all of guys, this was before Twitter and social media, back in the 1900s, when you used to, way back in the 1900s.
So old.
And I know. You guys probably never really knew each other until you all stepped on the floor together. You had played against each other, you had disliked each other, but then to get together and to play, all of you, from having seen each other in the state tournaments, how quickly was it clear that Illini team was going to be special?
Well, it became clear the summer after my sophomore year how good we were going to be, because we had Kenny Battle. We forgot to mention him. He was a pro also. Yeah. Kenny Battle transferred from Northern Illinois. He was the engine that made us go. And the most special thing about that team was we weren't very big. Marcus Liberty was 6'8", and he was our tallest player.
Yeah.
But the thing is Dick Vitale. You guys know Dick Vitale? You guys know Dickie V? Okay, he gave us the nickname the Flying Illini. Okay, and that name, I still think to this day that's one of the best nicknames for a college basketball team ever.
Absolutely.
The Flying Illini, because we played above the rim. We were all between 6'5" and 6'8", but we could play at the top of the square. You know, we could jump higher. We were athletic. We were very smart. We were energetic. We had a great coach in Lou Henson. You know, and we were dogs, you know, because we were from Chicago, you know, and we took pride in that. And you know, a team that we beat twice, we blew them out. Michigan eventually beat us in the Final Four, but they had guys like Lloyd Vault, Ramil Robinson, Terry Mills, Glenn Rice, who was an NBA All-Star, who I played with briefly in Charlotte. And we took these guys apart, and they were giants at the time. So it was a very special team.
Did you feel like in many ways, because having watched those teams and having, you know, we're roughly the same vintage, it seems now like y'all were a bit ahead of the curve. You had a guy who was playing center, you had a guy who was playing 4, a guy playing 3, but really y'all could play every square foot of this court.
Yeah, we could, and we switched off. Like I would sometimes be guarding Terry Mills, who was 6'10", 6'11", but we weren't afraid to do that because of our athleticism and because we believed in one another and helping each other out. And back then, college basketball now is kind of watered down because I mean, if you're good now, you leave after the first year. Back then, guys stayed in college. They stayed in for 3 years. I mean, the earliest somebody really came out is after their sophomore year. You remember Rex Chapman, who was my teammate in Charlotte. He came out after his sophomore year, and we thought that was way too early. You know, now these guys are thinking about coming out in the 8th grade. As a matter of fact, I can see that kid right there thinking right now he's about to come out, you know? So that's what he's thinking, you know?
It's like, this is my day.
Right, but back then in the 90s, we played against 3 to 4 pros on every team.
Yeah.
That's why college basketball was a lot better back then.
Agreed.
Yeah.
NBA draft night 1990, you go 5th overall to the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah.
You've had so many accomplishments since then. What was that like? Is that night still so vivid in your mind? Do you remember, had you ever thought about what it would be like to play in Charlotte, or was that the first moment you were like, here we go?
Well, honestly, I really wish Charlotte had passed me up, you know, at the time.
Yeah.
I'm glad they eventually drafted me, but at the time I wanted to go to 1 pick later to Minnesota because I felt like in Charlotte they already had a 2-guard in Rex Chapman, which is the position that I played. Also, Rex was a friend of mine, and I didn't want to compete with Rex Chapman as my friend for playing time. But they drafted me, I went there, and it all worked itself out.
It certainly did. It certainly did. And it's funny because we talked to, you know, I've been doing this a long time in sports talk radio, and you talk to guys who will often say, the place where I ended up wasn't the place where I wanted to go.
Right.
But then you show up and you're immediately, I mean, that moment when you get your first paycheck as a pro, that makes all the difference in the world. Do you remember what that feeling was like the first time you're like, oh, I'm getting paid for this now?
Well, I still have the picture of my first paycheck.
Do you?
It's framed up on my wall, and I can remember going out and buying a car right away. You know, being young, I was 21 years old.
Yeah.
I had a bucket, which was a VW 74 Rabbit when I was in college. So I went out and I bought a nice car for myself, and you know, but I still have the picture of the pay stub.
Yeah, and I think those moments too. The next year you have another great moment where not only is the All-Star game in Charlotte, your new home, right?
Right.
But you're also in the slam dunk contest. You and Rex. And it's one of the slam dunk contests that the folks here in the Northeast remember I could do this.
Yeah, D. Brown.
And every Celtic fan in the joint remembers the D. Brown slam dunk contest. You were in that too, in your home city of Charlotte at the time. Can you talk to us about the feeling in the room, being around? You were a great dunker. Sean Kemp was in that. You know, he had obviously D and some great one. What was that moment like?
It was actually during the warm-ups. I was going up, I was dunking everything, but when it came to be my turn, I got so nervous. I still did a nice dunk. But,
I saw it, yeah.
But it wasn't what I was doing in the warm-ups. So I mean, that's the only time really ever in my career that I've been kind of a deer in the headlights.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and but eventually D Brown won it. Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember him pumping up his Reeboks. And you know, I still to this day don't think D is a better dunker than me. You know, and I tell him that all the time. I just told him he was the better man that night.
I remember that, right? Your first dunk didn't go down. Your second one was fantastic. Took off from, you know, right inside the free throw line,
yeah.
Crammed it. But that night, I mean, the Sean Kemps of the world, really, those power dunks.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about that era of dunkers and scorers? Because that's really, you were the first true shooting guard off the board in that draft.
Right.
And that was the era of shooting, high scoring, and dunking.
Right, exactly. And, you know, I played with Sean Kemp actually in Seattle, and Sean is next to Larry Johnson. Sean is probably one of the best players that I've played against. I think that Larry Johnson is the best player that I've ever played with, hands down, before he hurt his back. I know a lot of the kids don't remember Larry Johnson, but Grandmama back in the day, before he hurt his back, would give the business to everybody. I'm talking about Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, David Robinson. When Larry Johnson was healthy, he dominated everybody. Unfortunately, he hurt his back. Or if he hadn't hurt his back, he'd be a surefire Hall of Famer.
For sure.
But getting back to the dunks, you know, guys back then, I mean, it was an era where Michael Jordan had already come in. Guys were trying to imitate Michael Jordan, even the big guys, Sean Kemp, 6'10", 250 pounds, could get up there. So could Larry Johnson. We didn't have all the creativity that they have today.
Sure.
But as time goes on, there's evolution. Guys have evolved with their dunks. In 10, 20 years, guys will probably be doing better dunks than Zach LaVine today.
And that is the beauty of this game, right? Is that it's a constant. Not only is it a sort of an American history, but it's also the constant evolution.
The constant evolution.
Yeah.
You know, I saw a guy actually do a flip and grab the ball and dunk it. And did a 360 the other day, and I'm like, how do you think about these things?
Chicago.
And, yeah, and that's just what they do. I mean, the last dunk contest with Zach LaVine and Gordon was the best dunk contest I've ever seen. You guys see that dunk contest? All right, yeah, those guys were great, and you know, hopefully, you know, we'll see more dunks in the future that are great.
In about 10 minutes, you're going to get a chance to raise your hand and get ready to ask Kendall Gill a question. So now's the chance to start letting that simmer in your head. If you've ever wanted to ask a 15-year NBA veteran a question, start thinking about that now. I'll give you the warning again in 5. After 3 years in Charlotte, you get traded. The first time in your life that you're told you're not playing here anymore, someone else has you now.
Right.
What was that? How did you learn about your first trade to Seattle?
Well, actually, that I wasn't. I knew about the trade. I signed a free agent contract in Charlotte. I was actually the first player in NBA history to have a 4-year deal with an opt-out in the 3rd year, and I exercised my option. And I'll let you guys in on a little secret. You're not going to tell anybody, all right?
It's just between us. We're good.
I really didn't want to leave Charlotte. I was just using the Seattle contract as a bargaining tool. But unfortunately, I got burned, and it backfired on me. And I had to go to Seattle, which was a great team. They had Sean Kemp, Gary Payton, Detlef Schrempf, Sam Perkins. George Karl was the coach there. We actually, when I went there, first team to win. First number 1 seed to get beat by an 8th seed, the Denver Nuggets in NBA history. But I really never wanted to leave Charlotte. I always wanted to play with Larry Johnson, Muggsy Bogues, Alonzo Mourning. Of course, we all know the Orlando Magic team with Shaq and Penny and Nick Anderson. I think if I had stayed in Charlotte, we would have had something to say about that. I think that we probably would have been a better team than Atlanta.
Then 2 years later, you go back to Charlotte. You get your wish to go back to Charlotte. But was that a moment where Kendall Gill, young Kendall Gill, maybe 26, 27 at the time, realizes maybe all this stuff that the old guys tell me about not being able to go home again, maybe that is, did it feel different when you went back that second time?
It felt different. I thought that that we would pick up where we left off.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to go back. I was so happy because I never really wanted to leave.
Yep.
But unfortunately, Alonzo Mourning was traded during training camp, and that busted up the whole dream.
Yeah, it really did.
Yeah, he was traded to the Miami Heat.
You ended up playing in Miami. You played in Minnesota, and of course your hometown Chicago Bulls.
Yeah.
Was the Chicago Bulls stop for you because of who you are and your affinity and your love for your hometown? Was that more about Kendall Gill getting a chance to do it at home?
Yeah, it totally was. You know, my parents talked to me about coming home. My brothers wanted me to come home. I actually should have stayed in Minnesota because that was the better team. But, you know, I wanted to come home and play for my friend Bill Cartwright, who had the triangle offense. Yep. By the way, if anybody tells you guys that the triangle offense is not good, they're crazy. It only won 11 championships. You know, the triangle offense is built for basketball players, guys that can think and know the game. It's not built for guys that are one-on-one guys or guys that display one-on-one talent. It's basically a team concept. You know, if Michael Jordan, the greatest player to ever play, can run it, then I think anybody can run that thing and be successful. But, you know, and also when I came back to Chicago, Scottie Pippen was also coming back. And I always wanted to play with Scottie. Unfortunately, the whole mix didn't work out. And but I was glad to put on the Chicago Bulls uniform.
Yeah, that moment of sort of the uniform that you watched as a kid, getting to put that on. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So now's your chance. I have 2 questions left. And after that, you guys got to bring the heat. So if you ever wanted to ask Kendall Gill a question, now's your chance. You can raise your hand, and one of the great Hoop Hall staffers will recognize you and put you in line. Over here to my right, your left. All right, so now you're in the TV game. And I was telling you this back there, and it's no joke. As a basketball nerd, I watch an awful lot of hometown broadcasts across the nation. What you do with the Chicago Bulls broadcast, you make it look effortless because there is an education piece to what you're doing. But I have to feel like it's difficult for you, one of the great players of all time, to not apply your standard of excellence to a guy who's maybe a 10-day contract guy, right? Don't you want everyone who's playing to be able to be? Was that the hard transition for you to be able to apply that?
Yeah, it was a very hard transition because when you're a player, you're used to doing things instinctively, you know, right away. But now, as an analyst, if I want to make a point, I have to think about what I'm going to say first and then tell all of the fans on television. You got to remember 2 things. You got to tell them what and you got to tell them why, because a lot of fans don't understand the different nuances that are going on in the game. But, you know, making the transition to TV was rough at first because I was going too fast.
Sure.
I wasn't going slow enough, and you know, I was stumbling over my words. A lot of people think that talking about basketball and getting in front of the camera is easy, but you don't know that you have to do your research. You have a whole television crew that's in front of you telling you to look at this camera, look at this camera. So you could be doing this, but this camera is on, and you look silly. So those are the different nuances that you have to learn about the TV game. You know, I do NBA TV from time to time. You know, I have a lot of fun down there with Rick Kamla and all the guys, and Vince Cellini is one of my guys, and then Dennis Scott and Shaq and all those guys. So, you know, it's what I want to do. I went to the University of Illinois, got my degree in communication. So, you know, my mom told me the other day I'm glad you're using your education to make a living now. So you know, I'm glad that I made the transition into television.
leave it to our moms to keep us humble, right? My final question, as we sit here under the watchful eye of all the hundreds who have come before, some of them your teammates, some of them your idols, some of them your coaches, what is it like for Kendall Gill, a man who's accomplished so much in this game, to be sitting here on center court of the Basketball Hall of Fame, not only talking to these fans, but talking to the ghosts above us? Well,
it means everything. It's an honor to be sitting before you guys. You know, sometimes a lot of players leave the game and they're forgotten about. And, you know, I'm just happy that you guys remember me enough to ask me to come in and talk and share my stories amongst all the greats that we see up in the rafters here and to share my story with some of the younger players. I know when I was young and I saw a pro, I would always be in tune with him, listening to everything that he had. And one player in particular, Mitchell Wiggins. You guys know who Mitchell Wiggins is?
Yes.
Okay, Mitchell Wiggins is Andrew Wiggins' dad, superstar that plays for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Mitchell Wiggins, I was a sophomore at the University of Illinois, still not really sure about myself going to the NBA, and he happened to be in the gym that I was working out in. Mitchell Wiggins at that time was playing with the Houston Rockets. I walked up to him and I said, Mitch, what does it take for me to make it to the NBA? He looked at me and he said, "Do you believe in yourself?" That was it. He didn't give me any pointers on playing basketball. One thing, do you believe in yourself? And I still carry that with me today.
Wow.
Even as a television analyst.
Yeah.
You know, when I first walked out there on the camera, yeah, I was messing up, but I believed in myself. And here I am 9 years later, and I'm okay at my job.
You're pretty good.
Okay.
You're pretty good. You ever tell Andrew that story? Have you ever had a chance to tell Andrew Wiggins?
Never told him that story. I've seen him a couple times, but and we didn't have an opportunity to speak. But one day when I see him, I'll sit him down and
That's
tell
a
him.
great story.
Yeah, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we get to the fan questions, can we give a 60 Days of Summer thank you round of applause to Kendall Gill?
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
It's awesome. I love that story.
Yeah.
All right, let's get these going. All I ask, come on over, is that you can stand at this little piece of tape next to me, and 2 requests. 1, that you let me hold the mic. 2, that you introduce yourself to Kendall, and then ask your question.
Hi, Kendall. I'm John Tripp. I was born in North Carolina.
Hey, John.
I live in Chicago now.
Oh.
But I'm a Bostonian, so I got to come with this one. 1993 was the first year I was ever really, 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 really into basketball. Charlotte Hornets versus Boston Celtics in the playoffs. My man Kevin McHale goes up with a shot. Was that a goaltend?
No. I know exactly what you're talking about. Actually, we were in the playoffs, and they had run a play and I told Larry Johnson to switch, but Larry didn't switch, and I got caught. D. Brown was going to the hoop, and they threw a lob. D, of course, slam dunk champion, went up and had the ball and was putting it up there. I just jumped as high as I could and got my hand on it. So it wasn't a goaltend. If it was a goaltend, the ref would have called it. Yeah. Right? Okay.
I thought it touched the rim. I also thought
honestly, it didn't touch the rim.
McHale's last game, all right, cool. I had to ask the question.
And I love Kevin McHale. He's a good friend of mine. But even he asked me that question.
Hey, it was an awesome
And I
series.
told him the same thing.
To be honest, I was actually kind of rooting for the Hornets that series, man. I loved LJ. I loved that team. That was one of my favorite teams of all time.
Great, you got your wish.
That's a great.
and actually, that series was kind of bittersweet because we played the Boston Celtics, and that was actually the late Reggie Lewis's last series. I remember in Game 2, I was running alongside Reggie at the Boston Garden on the parquet floor, and that's the first time that he collapsed from his heart condition, and that was the last game that he ever played. But you know, I just want to give big ups to Reggie Lewis, and I actually rank Reggie Lewis as the 5th hardest player I've ever had to guard.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can't say his name without giving me the feels, Kendall. It's
Reggie
hard.
Lewis is a great player.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Jacob.
Hey, Jacob.
I have a question. How was it to be on the Chicago Bulls?
How was it to be on the Chicago Bulls? It was a great experience. I came home. My family got to see me play every night. I got to wear the Bulls uniform, a jersey that I grew up watching. And, you know, it parlayed me into my TV career. So I went from playing for the Chicago Bulls to doing television for them, which I still do.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jacob.
Here come the tough questions, I can tell.
Okay.
Here come the hard ones.
Hi, I'm Trayvon Jones, and I have a question. Did you meet Steph Curry when he was little?
He asked me, did I meet Steph Curry when he was little? Actually, yeah. Steph Curry, I played with Steph's dad, Dale Curry, on the Charlotte Hornets. We played together for 3.5 years, and Steph used to be your size. And he used to come in, he couldn't shoot like that, like he does now. But he would come in and he would work on his game and was a nice kid, just like he is now. But now he has a little bit more of a killer instinct in him. And actually, I think that Steph Curry is the best shooter of all time. You know, hands down, there's nobody. I know we talk about the Larry Birds, the Reggie Millers, the Glenn Rices, but the one thing about Steph, he is in range when he walks through the door. Those guys had to get a little bit closer. And also Steph can shoot off the dribble. He can shoot off the catch. He can shoot off coming off of screens. So that's why I rate him as the best of all time.
Great question. Great question. Keep them coming. It's funny because Steph is that. I mean, Dell is still the all-time leading scorer in Charlotte Hornets history.
Yeah, he is.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's something.
Hello, my name is Jordan, and I got a question. How is it like playing with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen?
How was it like to play against Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Michael Jordan was a guy that had no weaknesses at all, none. And you know, I'll actually tell you a story about Michael's competitiveness. I was playing with the Charlotte Hornets, New Year's Eve. Michael comes to town to visit his parents, so we start playing cards, and I'm beating Michael out of all his money, okay? And we play a game called Tomp, and it's about 1 o'clock in the morning, and we're still playing. I have practice the next day, by the way. Michael keeps me up all night until he wins his money back. That's how competitive he is. And I'm nodding off and doing this. Hey, wake up, wake up, wake up. We got one more hand to play. I'm like, okay, last hand. He did that maybe 100 times, last hand. But Michael, you know, and we go back to Kobe Bryant, who's an all-time great, but Kobe Bryant stole a lot of stuff from Michael Jordan. I'm not mad at him, but, you know, he's like, why reinvent the wheel? I'm going to do what Michael does. And, you know, a lot of people ask me, who is the better player, Michael or Kobe? And I tell them this. Michael averaged 30 points a game over his career with hand-checking rules. You know what hand-checking is?
No.
Come here, let me show you. Say, for instance, I'm guarding you. Come here. Say, for instance, I'm guarding you, okay? And you're dribbling the basketball. So pretend like you're dribbling the basketball. I can do you like this. I can do you like this. That means I can direct you any way I want you to go, okay? Thanks a lot, man. And Michael averaged 30 points a game with hand-checking rules. And we used to beat Michael up. I mean, we used to be really physical with him. The game was a lot different back then. Kobe averaged, and I'm not taking anything away from Kobe. Kobe's a great player, one of the best of all time. But I'm just trying to make the difference between Michael and Kobe. Kobe averaged maybe 28 without hand-checking rules. What do you think Michael would average without hand-checking rules?
Ooh. Yeah.
Okay. So that's how you can tell the difference between who was better, okay?
Did you ever get dunked on?
Did I ever get dunked on? Yeah, Michael Jordan dunked on me, man. I think it's you know, I actually took my sons to watch the IMAX movie, and he said, "Dad, you just got dunked on by Michael Jordan." I was like, "Ugh." But Michael got me in the playoffs. But here's the thing. They never show the times that I dunked on Michael. That's because I'm not Michael. Okay. All right, good question.
Yeah, it's almost it's a notch in your belt to get dunked on by Michael Jordan. Right?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Makai, and I got one question. Have you ever got crossed up?
Have I ever got crossed over? If you spend 15 years in the NBA, you're going to get crossed over. You know, Allen Iverson crossed me over nasty a couple times. You know, Allen Iverson, and for you guys that, you guys probably caught Allen Iverson at the end of his career, but Allen Iverson was one of the toughest guys I ever had to guard. Not the toughest, but one of the toughest, because he always kept coming. He was always attacking, attack, and then he had the crossover dribble, which was probably the best in history. You guys remember when he crossed over Michael Jordan twice and then put the hoop up? Yeah, that was Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson was a great player who's going into the Hall this year. Congratulations, AI.
Thank you very much. All right. Yeah, Allen, you know, and with his size, too, that was what made Allen so difficult, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
he wasn't that big.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't that big.
Hi, my name is Josh. Did you ever go to a championship or win a championship?
Did I ever? No, I never won a championship. And no, this is one of the things that I regret. I got a story about this too. I was actually in the hotel room with the Los Angeles Lakers. I was about to sign with the Los Angeles Lakers. That would mean I would team up with Shaq, Kobe, Rick Fox, and all those guys, okay? As I was walking out of my hotel room to go to the press conference, I already had agreed to the deal in principle, okay? And this is gonna seem really minuscule compared to the money that they're making today, but I had agreed to a 2-year, $5.5 million deal, okay? Meaning I get probably $2.75 million a year for those 2 years. As I was walking out of my hotel room to go downstairs to meet Mitch Kupchak to take me over to the press conference to announce my signing, I forgot my cell phone in my hotel room. So as I go to the elevator, I go back to the hotel room, pick up my cell phone, and it rings. It's the owner of the New Jersey Nets, the late Louis Katz. He says, Kendall, we're going to give you $7 million for 1 year. So, you guys don't know how upset I was because I wanted to play. I knew I was going to win championships if I played with the Lakers, but here, $7 million is $7 million. I don't care how you look at it. You can, you know.
Yeah, that's generational.
That's generational wealth. And one of the things that you guys have to understand that as professional athletes, we have a short period of time to make as much money as we can. Okay? The guys now, you know, with Mike Conley making $153 million, he has enough money. He could probably pass that deal up. But at the time, that would not make great business sense for me. So I had to sacrifice 3 or 4 championships to be a good businessman. And that's some of the things as professional athletes we have to face.
That's a story.
Yeah.
That's a story. How are you, sir?
Good, how are you? My name is Derek, and my question is, how many points did you score in a game?
What's the most points I ever scored? 41 against my my old teammate Nick Anderson. And you know, actually I talked to Nick about 3 weeks ago, and I said, Nick, you know, I got my career high on you. I got 41 on you. And then he said, hey, you know what? I got 43 on you. Go back and check. And he did. He actually scored 43 on me a couple years after I'd done it to him.
It's the only time that plus minus won't work in your favor
Right,
is
exactly.
against it.
Exactly.
A couple more. I love this. I love this. They're bringing the heat on you today,
Yeah,
Kendall.
they are. Good questions.
My name's Jordan. When did you make it to the NBA?
I made it. I actually was drafted in 1990 with the 5th pick in the draft, and I went on to. Before that, I was at the University of Illinois for 4 years. So in 1990, I came in. I was drafted.
That was a great draft too. That was
Yeah,
a
it
fun
was.
one to watch.
Derek Coleman was the first pick in the
Yeah.
draft. Gary Payton second.
As a Syracuse guy, that Derek Coleman draft always sits in my heart. Larry Bird gonna ask a question.
All right.
How's it going, Brian Vincent? How do you, the era that you played basketball, I mean, Larry Johnson, Alonzo Mourning, D. Brown, Penny, Shaq, how do you compare that basketball in the 90s to what you're being involved or seeing in TV today? I'm just curious how to compare. That was a very impressive era.
Okay, well, I tell everybody that the difference in play now is that the guys now are not as fundamentally sound as the guys back then. The reason why is because we stayed in school and we mastered the fundamentals. A lot of players that come out that are one and done guys, there's only so many Derrick Roses, there's only so many LeBron James that come out and are ready right now to play. When guys come out that are one and done, they're not really ready. Well, Karl Anthony Towns was ready.
Yep.
But, to play the pro game and you're playing against grown men, it's difficult. And, in my era, I think the basketball was a lot better because you didn't have to wait on the guys to get ready to play at a pro level.
As a result, we see many more players from Europe being drafted now, right?
Right, a lot more players from Europe being drafted, but I still think the best players in the world are from right here, the United States of America.
And Chicago.
And Chicago.
Ladies and gentlemen, one final 60 Days of Summer round of applause for Kendall
Thank you
Gill.
guys. Thanks for having me.
Kendall, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you.